Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Just My Two Cents. I'm super excited to be back with another video. So, today we are actually doing a Dinnerly review. Now, before we get started, I do want to say that this particular review is based on my own money. Dinnerly did not sponsor this video. However, Dinnerly, if you want to sponsor a video, just let me know and we can definitely make that happen. But this review is not sponsored. These are my actual reviews and opinions of Dinnerly. So let's go ahead and jump right in and talk about Dinnerly, what is Dinnerly, and pretty much how it stacks up against Home Shelf as well as HelloFresh. So let's go ahead and get started. So, Dinnerly prides itself on being an affordable meal kit for having fast, easy, and tasty meals that start at just $4.69 per person per meal. Also, Dinnerly has 16 recipes every week for you to choose from. In addition, most of Dinnerly's meals can be completed in just 5 simple steps. Dinnerly also markets to a lot of families, so they also try to make sure that they have a lot of food options for those who might be picky eaters. So that's a really good thing if you are a person that has picky eaters that might be kids, or you might be like myself and be an adult that's a picky eater. So Dinnerly is like other meal prep companies. Basically, you pick your recipes as well as your delivery day. Then they send your ingredients in an insulated box, and then you cook your meals. And they also provide the different recipe cards so that you can recreate the meals that you have decided to cook for that week. So, like other meal prep companies, you can skip weeks with Dinnerly. However, Dinnerly states that it is specifically for people who like home cooking. However, they might enjoy their evenings and want an easier or simpler meal with less ingredients, which means less clean up. Also, Dinnerly cites that their meals usually cost about $4.69 per adult serving, which is really good, especially when you compare this price to other home cooked delivery meals that, to be honest, are really expensive. So I think that if you are a larger family, Dinnerly is definitely for you. Dinnerly also addresses the elephant in the room. And the elephant is, why are you able, or how are you able to have meals for just $4.69? Are the meals the same quality as other meal prep companies? Are you all cutting corners? Where are you getting your produce or your meat from? Like, these are all the questions that I had when I was signing up for Dinnerly. And you might have as well, because $4.69 per meal is pretty cheap. However, Dinnerly addresses this on their website by stating they take a simpler approach about how they prepare their meal kits. First, instead of having paper recipe cards, you have digital recipe cards. So for Dinnerly, you will need a computer, an iPad, or a tablet, or some type of smartphone device so that you'll be able to pull up your recipe cards. Also, they have fewer ingredients per dish, which also means that you don't have a lot to clean up once you have finished making your dish. And lastly, they have a simple packaging as well as a simple marketing campaign. And to me, I think that this is worth it, because I know with other meal prep companies, usually I have a whole bunch of meal prep cards sitting around that I really don't want to throw away, because I low-key want to recreate those, but then I forget to recreate those. So they become paper that I have in a drawer in the kitchen. Also, with the marketing, I usually just throw that away after staring at it for a couple days. So I do appreciate this simpler approach that Dinnerly does have. So what you're seeing on the screen is one of the Dinnerly boxes that I received. It's pretty much an insulated box that has some printed materials on it. And what's on the box is pretty much to download the app, to make sure that you chill the ingredients inside, also to be fragile and to recycle. And it also has some marketing materials on there as well. And once you actually open the box, it does have some information about what to have for the checklist, to make sure you check everything off for the recipes, and if you have any questions, who to contact. So upon receiving each box, I would go through and make sure that I had pretty much all the materials that I needed and that I had ordered. Also, I would go through to make sure that the quality of what I had received was in good condition. Afterwards, I would go through and separate each ingredient to go with the meal that it was supposed to. And this honestly really helped out during the week because I was able to put it in the refrigerator as a meal and then take it out of the refrigerator as a meal instead of me just throwing everything in the refrigerator and then trying to search and say, okay, this goes with this goes with that. Everything was pretty much organized because I had organized on the front end when I took it out of the box, as well as I already knew what to expect because I knew how many ingredients went with certain meals, and I knew like if it was more ingredients, it would probably take longer. So on days that I didn't want to cook, I knew which meals to go ahead and grab rather than trying to figure that out on the back end. However, one thing I did notice when I was separating the different ingredients with its particular meal is that sometimes some of the produce was a little bruised. And I'm not sure if that's because when the box is being shipped, it gets shaken around. So if it comes in contact with a can, it gets bruised or what have you. But I did notice that, and it was somewhat of a concern, but I was able to just kind of cut it off. It really wasn't that big of a deal, but I did want to mention that. So the first meal that I made with Dinnerly was the chicken and cheddar tostadas with guac. And this meal right here was pretty simple to make, and it only took about 20 minutes to make in total. Actually, it was only supposed to take 15 minutes, but I decided to kind of switch up the recipe just a little bit. So in order for me to begin cooking this, all I had to do was download the Dinnerly app, open up the app, and click on the recipe under the meals that I had picked for that particular week. And once I did that, it pretty much told me all the ingredients that I needed, which I had already sorted through earlier when I received the box. And then I was able to click on the recipe card and follow the recipe pretty much as it was written out. It was pretty much very simple for me to follow, and so I followed it pretty much to a T, except for when it got to the portion where it talked about the chicken. So I'm from the South, and pretty much when it comes down to the chicken, I like to make sure that my chicken is done. And that chicken was a little light for me. So what I decided to do instead was take the chicken, pour the water off, dice the chicken up or pull the chicken apart as you all see on the screen, and then from there I decided to actually take a pan, put a little bit of olive oil inside of it, and from there just brown the chicken a little bit more so that I can make sure that it was fully cooked. Not saying that I didn't trust Dinnerly, but I don't want any type of salmonella, so for my sake and my peace of mind, I did that. Afterwards, I pretty much got back to the original recipe. I sorted through the chicken and put it on the different tortilla shells, and then I put the guac on it as well as the sour cream on there. And I will admit, it tastes really, really good. Like, that was a solid recipe, and I look forward to making it again. And this is another recipe that I made, the cheesy beef enchiladas verde. And like the other recipe, I was able to see all of the ingredients that I needed, and I was also able to see the cooking steps by simply going on my iPad and pulling up the Dinnerly app. In addition to that, I already had all of my ingredients separated. Now, with this particular recipe, I did want to point out the piece about the produce. As you can see, this entailed garlic, and out of all the garlic that they sent, I was only able to use just a little bit of it because most of it had been like bruised, or it didn't necessarily look like I should use it. So I decided to only use just a little bit of it. However, I followed the rest of the recipe as it was outlined once I was able to chop up the garlic and use the amount that I was able to use, and it turned out pretty well. I will say with this particular recipe, I did kind of mess it up just a little bit because the directions were a little unclear, but it didn't taste nasty or anything like that. It was actually pretty good because it ended up all coming together at the end. And I will say that this is actually one of the pretty easy and pretty quick recipes, and I was able to eat this for dinner as well as lunch the next day. And I did have some extra ones left over, and it didn't use up a lot of dishes. So I would definitely say that this was another recipe that turned out really good. Another recipe that Dinnerly sent was a cake, and the cake turned out really good as well. And another meal that I had from Dinnerly was the ravioli. So this was a vegetarian dish that came with zucchini as well, and it turned out pretty good. So their vegetarian dishes as well as their non-vegetarian dishes are really good. So I would definitely recommend it. So, what is my overall review of Dinnerly? Is it worth it? I think that Dinnerly is worth it, especially when you compare that you're getting adult full-size meals for only $4.69. And for me, I had enough for not only dinner, but I had enough for lunch too. And with some of the other meals, I was able to kind of make a third meal if I wanted to. So I did like the option of having my dinner as well as my lunch and maybe a third meal if I decided to eat it for another time. Now, in addition to that, I really appreciated that it did not come with those paper cards. Those paper cards kind of stack up over time and they kind of become something where it's like in addition to other things that you kind of hoard in your house because you don't necessarily want to throw them away because you have tricked yourself into believing that you're going to use them in the future. And I have kind of fallen into that mindset, and so now I have a lot of other meal prep company cards sitting around because I think I'm going to use those in the future, which I might. I have recreated some sometimes, but for the most part, they're just sitting there, and I do like the fact that Dinnerlies are digital, so I'm able to go back digitally to recreate the recipes by pulling up the recipe cards online or in the app rather than sifting through all those different papers. Also, I appreciate that Dinnerly is pretty much like the other services, and I appreciate too that Dinnerly has simple recipes. So most of their recipes I was able to complete and cook right under 20 to 30 minutes, where with other companies it might take about 20 to 30 to 40 minutes or longer. And I will be honest, if it takes 30, 40, or even 50 minutes for me to cook during the week, I'm probably going to go out to eat first before going to the box and saying like, let's see what came in this box that I can actually use this meal. So I would say that Dinnerly is definitely worth it. Now let's talk about some of the things about Dinnerly that I didn't like. The first thing I didn't like about Dinnerly was the simple fact that they don't have a lot of meal options to choose from. Yes, 16 meals, it sounds like a lot, but when most of the meals have to entail vegetarian options or maybe a breakfast option or an option where it might be a dessert or something like that, that kind of cuts into those 16 meals. So you end up with maybe only about 10 or 12 meals to really choose from. And I kind of like other meal prep services such as HelloFresh as well as Home Shelf because they do have more options to choose from when it comes down to the different meal options. And with Dinnerly, you only get a certain amount of meals, and I understand that you're only limited to that certain amount of meals because it's $4.69. So that is something to consider. Also, another thing I did not like about Dinnerly was the simple fact that the produce was kind of bruised. Now, as I showed you all in the video, the garlic as well as the zucchini was somewhat bruised. So luckily, I was able to kind of cut some of the zucchini off that was bruised, and it didn't take away from any of the portion size. And then with the garlic, I don't like a lot of garlic in my food in the first place, so I wasn't necessarily completely upset about that. But if you are a person who enjoys a lot of different food, um, in regards to garlic and a lot of produce and things of that nature, and you want to use all of it, then you might be a little bit disappointed. So the last thing I didn't like about Dinnerly was the fact that for each meal you had to go in and find out which ingredients went with each meal. So that required you to take an extra step to go inside of the app or to the website to figure out which meal needed which ingredients, and to kind of read ahead to make sure that some meals didn't require you to use the same ingredients, so you had to kind of figure out if you need to split things in half. So that's one thing that I didn't necessarily care for. And with other meal prep companies, I do appreciate them taking the extra step of kind of separating each ingredient that went with each meal, so that I was able to just grab it out of the refrigerator, than me taking time when I received the box to not only make sure I had all the ingredients, but for me to just, kind of just figure out what went with what. So I would definitely say that was a downside for it. It wasn't definitely something where I would be like, oh no, I'm not getting it again because of that. But that did kind of, it was new for me. I would say that it was definitely something that was new for me. So it's definitely worth it. I think that Dennerly is definitely worth it. It's definitely worth a try. It was only $19 for my first box, and I think for my second box it came to be about $30, but it was $44 altogether, $46 altogether when you added the tax as well as the shipping. So I think generally it's worth it. I was able to eat off of it for an entire week, as well as well, not the entire week, for like 4 days a week. And then I was also able to carry some of the meals for lunch. So I do think it's worth it. I think if you have a family where you have kids who want to help cook, they have really simple dishes so that they can be a part of preparing for dinner as well. Or if you're somebody who gets home from work and you want a nice home cooked meal, but you don't want all the different ingredients, this is definitely something for you as well. So I would give Dinnerly a thumbs up, and I do think that it's worth it. So until next time, make sure that you go ahead, you like, you share, and that you subscribe. And if you have used Dinnerly in the past, or if you're planning to use Dinnerly, please drop down in the comment section and let us know your experience, or why you would like or are planning to try Dinnerly. Until next time, take care.